let's make the point of this video rather clear here. Okay. This is directed to Mike Sussman, but anybody can chime in, of course. But I want to get a few things across, since I think we are on the cusp of a change in leadership here regarding Star Trek. And Mike, I think you may very well be put in charge of the whole thing, because they need someone with experience of the franchise and also has some show running experience. And you were up there with Enterprise, so I think you're probably ready to take the reins here. Yes, you can see I voted in the local election there. Let me put that out of the way. My advice to Colorado voters: no on everything. Everything's a damn tax increase, or trying to work around Tabor and keep your money. No. Vote no. That's the end of that. Okay. Step 1 in how to get this thing back on track. I've got some notes over here. Disavow Kurtzman Trek. Only Lower Decks gets to stay as is. That's the only one that's not really tainted by anything. Season 3 of Picard. It's a good 10-hour pilot for Legacy, but it needs one more temporal anomaly to get it back in line with mainline canon. Everything else, it's mostly there, but there's still a couple of sniggling bits that Terran Towers couldn't get rid of. There's one more temporal what's it they got to deal with, and everything realigns, and we can move on from there. All right, and Prodigy, it's mostly there, but you really got to do something about that thing that they made them hook up with the synth rebellion on Mars. No, that needs to go, because that's like season 8 of Game of Thrones. It ruins the entire thing. So, basically, declare Discovery and everything springing from it, Strange New Worlds, first 2 seasons of Picard, obviously Academy and everything else, as an alternate timeline. That's easy enough, since nothing fits in canon anyway. And Lower Decks, with the last episode, with that little brief thing of the regular Klingon turning into a Discovery Klingon, there's your opening. Run with it. Just pick it up and run. Okay, this means basically no Romulan supernova. Now think about it. We can tell now, with our relatively primitive equipment and know-how, what star is going to go supernova. We've known it for decades. Carl Sagan went through it in an episode of Cosmos, of what stars do based on their mass. Our star is going to turn to a red giant, go and then shrink down to a red dwarf, a white dwarf. Something bigger would be a supergiant. Anything, but it's the middle ground where 1.5 times as massive as our sun. Those are the ones that go supernova. Now we know that now. You think a star-faring race like the Vulcans and the Romulans wouldn't be able to tell that? No, don't settle here. This star's going to blow up at some point. Because I was thinking about supernovas, you can't necessarily know when. It might be billions of years. It could be tomorrow. It's funny, but it's stupid. It's just dumb that they would even be there in the first place. And also, it's stupid that the entire Romulan star empire, spanning God knows how many systems, would go down because of the loss of one system, even as Romulus itself. That doesn't make any sense whatsoever. And also, it wouldn't make sense that they would need help at all evacuating the entire planet long beforehand, which also goes to the thing of why they would settle there in the first place. They wouldn't. It's stupid. It's always been stupid. Just get rid of it. Shuffle it off to that alternate timeline where everyone's morons. And just to put it up there and ignore it. And also, the synth uprising. An honest viewing of Measure of a Man, you'd know at the end of that episode that never would have happened, because there never would have been a android slave race to begin with. Captain Lavaz revealing at the end of that thing, no, Data has the right to choose. Therefore, it's like, guess what? Androids have rights in Federation society. So your little synth rate would never have happened in the first damn place. And that's further backed up with, the episode The Offspring, where Data creates Lau. Another one which they clearly didn't watch. in doing Picard. Oh, he created a daughter. Yeah, he did that way back when. We know about that. Where the hell you been? Not watching Star Trek Next Generation, clearly. Now, as for keeping Picard in an android body, that's your call, but them invoking the Irumodic syndrome, which, like, you know, it was in All Good Things, but also very early on, while Picard's bouncing around, Beverly, yeah, I scanned you for Irumodic syndrome. You don't have a trace of it. That was a MacGuffin within the episode, and by the end of it, it's like there's no indication that that was ever really real. So there's no reason. So really, there's no reason that Picard would be in an android body in the first damn place. So while it's still valid within the resolution of that third season of Picard, you get that. Be part of the, you know, when they finally do the reset and everything resets and they're in the gray-shouldered Starfleet uniforms and there's carpet on the thing and the sets are well lit, and do a quick scan of Jean-Luc, it's like you're in a normal human body. You got the mechanical heart, but that's it. Everything else is fine. And again, no trace of Irumodic syndrome. This is they pulled a reference from Memory Alpha, ran with it, didn't bother to watch the damn episode. That's like the whole modus operandi. They don't watch it, but they have no problem ripping off things from here left and right, from whatever listing they're reading from. I'm surprised they don't hear the ghost of Harlan Ellison screaming at him in the hallways. To what they did with the Guardian Forever. Okay. Other matters. No more movies. May have been necessary back in the day, but in the long run, it's a mistake. Star Trek is a creature of television. That's where it belongs. That's where it does its best. Movies, the nature of movies, that this has to be the biggest, most important thing in these characters' lives. Except when it's a series, because then where do you go from up? That's something that JJ did not really think of when he blew up Vulcan and blew up Romulus. It's like, what do you do for an encore, asshole? And there will be one. This is not the only movie. What are you going to do next? It's kind of thing where if they had taken off the Star Trek label, it would be a passable sci-fi movie. I think it'd still be stupid. And the one good thing he did about it is he set it in an alternate timeline, so we can safely ignore it. But it's like, just get rid of the whole thing. And again, movies really should be earned. The original series movies, they kind of were earned because of the way the original series is treated and cut off the knees, and this was the opening we had at the time. But after a while, they really started to run out. Next Generation, their story was told. There really wasn't a need to go to the movies. It was just expected. That's the next step of the process, right? You start doing movies. And that's why, Generations kind of went over like a wet fart in church. First Contact, that one was good, but it also, like, I called Ron Moore on the carpet for it at the time. So you guys have watched Aliens a few too many times, I think. Because it was what was coming across. They pulled it off, but plot-wise, it's really, And Insurrection, despite all the screaming, that was probably the best one of the bunch as far as being a proper Star Trek story. But it wasn't grand sweeping, and there was pretty much a localized story type thing. They didn't have galaxy-wide implications. It would have been a very good 2-part episode. And I think that's why it kind of got trashed as a movie, because it wasn't grand enough for a movie. And then, of course, Nemesis, the less said, the better. Now, moving on to other things. Star Trek United. I'm all for it. I think let's get this back and get this thing back on a proper canon, framing. Do not reference anything with Discovery or anything. No, nothing. They're persona non grata as far as I'm concerned. No, nothing. If there's a reference to Discovery, it's a totally different ship. In fact, should be one of these. Yeah. And no, not a Constitution. The one just before it. It's a sister ship with a Constellation, so you can match up the reference number. But beyond that, no. The Star Trek Discovery does not exist in this world. But regarding, it's like, you just saw the Trek Yards thing about, the presidential transport ship. Just in real world thing, any plane the president is riding on is as a call sign of Air Force One. That's something that's made very clear in the Harrison Ford movie. When the president is on board that transport plane, and boom, okay, and the pilot says, "Okay, we are changing our call sign to Air Force One." That's not just dramatic; that would be actual thing. The sitting president is on board the plane. That plane is now Air Force One. Any plane it doesn't matter if it's a 747, if it's a Sopwith Camel or a Cessna. Whenever the president's on board a plane, or sitting president, that plane is Air Force One. So, okay. So again, in this case, like, even the dedicated planes, we know as Air Force One, they have their own call signs and registry numbers. And they revert to them when they're not carrying the president. It's something kind of neat when a former president is being at the ceremony of the new guy, and they're flying the old one, the former president back to home or whatever, and about halfway through, they get the word, okay, changing designation, we're no longer Air Force One, because you are no longer the president, Mr. President. He's back in Washington. We're now something else. But yeah, in this case, Starfleet One would be the proper designation. You wouldn't call it Federation One. The same way it's not United States One, it's Air Force One. So it would be Starfleet One. And again, I would recommend checking out the interior of Air Force One for the kind of facilities you want, because it's supposed to be, Air Force One is a flying White House. You got quarters, you got a little hospital thing in there, and you have mainly a cabinet room where you can have cabinet meetings with everybody on and conduct diplomacy. Have meetings, something. So this would be what a Starfleet One would be. Okay. Also, have Trip show up, hail and hearty, maybe as a cabinet member. I don't know what he'd be secretary of. Chairman of the Joint Chiefs, whatever. Commerce. I don't know, whatever. Whatever Connor thinks would float his boat. But the most it ever had, and there's just no reference whatsoever to what the hell happened in these other voyages. That's kind of been retconned out anyway with the scene at the Fleet Museum. But really, the most I would ever do it is just like somebody say, I thought you were dead. Yeah, I get that a lot. That should be it. That should be the most, just no reference anything beyond that. And on a lot of other stuff, you could do a lot worse than hiring me and Robert Byron Burnett as technical advisors. Because I certainly got the knowledge based on it, and Rob has some of the other, so we could fill in nice gaps and keep this on track. Okay. But beyond that, no, don't say that. Okay. But this is what we're going for. We're going to make Star Trek great again. And to that, I leave it to you. We'll talk at you later.